Welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Muschett, and today I have John Foster joining me. Welcome, John. It's good to have you
Hi,
back.
everyone. Hi, Liz. Good to see you.
So we're doing Discovering Midpoint Pictures Part 4. John is an astrologer, software developer, teacher, lecturer, graduate of Noel Till's master degree certification, and past president of WSAA, Washington State Astrology Association. And his website is astroperegrine.com. And I'm Elizabeth Liz Muschett. I'm an astrologer, author, intuitive, and numerologist, certified relationship astrologer, and dwarf planet graduate. And my website is alightpath.com. And John, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, so as in the previous, excuse me, let me drink a little bit of water before I get going. So the three previous lectures that we did on midpoints, from the beginning all the way up through the major ones and all of that. And in each of them, we started with this slide, which is if you hear me say planets or points or stellar bodies or some other bizarre term that you think I'm talking about something here, then that's what I'm talking about. So whenever I say any of those words, I'm either talking about the sun or moon, Mercury through Pluto, the ascendant through the MC, the north node or the nodal axis preferably, and then the Aries point, which is the 0 degrees Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn. Okay, those are the big ones, which are the start of all the seasons, so we pay attention to them. I thought I would remind everyone today that we're going to basically talk about descriptions today. We're going to talk about the planets, what they represent, and maybe some examples of how you can apply them with a couple midpoints. The previous ones, we did a lot of explaining what midpoints were, went right into midpoints and this kind of thing. But today we're going to go through the sun through Pluto, Ascendant MC, Aries point, all of that. And we're going to, like I said, we're going to have examples. So if you don't remember what a midpoint picture is, then this is how you read it. So you read it by, you have the planet, let's say the sun, equals 0.1 / 0.2. So let's say the sun equals Mercury, Venus. Okay, and it's in that particular order. So Mercury is the fastest planet, so that's on the inside, and the slower planet is on the outside of the slash. Okay, so it's planet equals this planet / planet. If you do it any other way, nobody will know you're talking about a midpoint picture. Okay, so let's go back to that slide again, Liz, and go back. Okay, so the main thing you want to see here is that a midpoint picture is composed of a focal point, which is the planet or point, and the midpoint. The midpoint, obviously, is you take 2 points, you put them together, you find out where they meet, and right in the middle of it, that's the midpoint. When you put the whole thing together, you get what's called a midpoint picture, okay, which is what where we get the juicy stuff when we're doing chart analysis. Okay, now here's a little bit more about it. So as we said in the previous one, we have the focal point, the midpoint picture. So the focal point, that's your contact. That's what you're trying to get to. And we use the equal sign to represent it. And another way of thinking about, rather than saying sun equals Jupiter, Pluto, you can say the sun is accomplished through Jupiter, Pluto. Okay? Because the sun is going to have to utilize these energies at this point where it's touching. So in this case, the sun is right exactly at the middle point of Jupiter and Pluto. So it's taking these energies and it's going to do something with them. And it's either going to connect with them, it's going to be colored by them, it's going to blend with them. Okay. Just in the same sort of way that you have an aspect. If you think about when we see an aspect and we see the sun is square this, or we see, let's say the sun is conjunct Jupiter, we see the blending of the sun and Jupiter, okay? Kind of think that way, but think in squares and T-squares because there's usually tension behind it, okay? Nothing comes easy in this life if we want to accomplish it. We need tension. All right, let's go to the next one. I hope that's clear. All right, so like I said, we're going to discuss planetary principles today, and we're going to start with the sun. Now, I would have used my glyphs, except for my glyphs are in a font which is not available on Google. So I have to fully describe the planet names here. So we're going to start with the sun. Now, you all know what the sun is. If you've been in astrology, if you've read one book on astrology, you already know the sun is the big deal. The sun is at the center of our solar system. It is sending out energy throughout that solar system. And because of it sending out that, we can see all of the other planets and asteroids and moons and debris and comets and all of those things we can see as a result of the sun. That's how important the sun is. Okay. Now, in our culture, astrological culture of recent, we've tended to diminish the sun because we sit there and think about, oh, sun sign astrology in the books, obviously there's more than 12 kinds of people. Well, yes, of course there's 12 kinds, more than 12 kinds of people, but there's only 12 astrological kinds of energy that are coming through the sun. Okay. So the sun's important. Now, what does the sun mean? Well, the first thing the sun does, as I said, is it illuminates. Okay. It causes things to grow. If we didn't have the sun, we wouldn't have light. We wouldn't have anything growing on this planet. That beautiful flower that you have sitting next to you over there wouldn't be there. Okay. It would be gone. In fact, we would not be having this conversation because there would be no life as we know it. Okay. It's conscious energy, which we will later juxtapose with the moon. It's masculine energy or masculine principle. Okay. To get away from the male and female stuff. It's your true sense of self. It's who you are becoming to become more of. Okay. It's other words that are used are purpose. Okay. Ego definition. All of these things, these words I've given you, I've elaborated, mean the same thing. Okay. So here you are, you're a sun. You're illuminating. Your job is to take your sun, you're to be your sun, and you're to shine your light out on the world. This is how you're going to make your mark, right? Now, let's say in your chart, you have the sun equals moon Jupiter. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is look at that moon Jupiter. How does that energy feel?
Oh boy.
Does it feel
Emotion.
positive, negative? Does it feel exciting? Does it feel optimistic? Does it feel pessimistic? What does it feel like to you, Liz?
Optimistic.
Yes, exactly. Because it's Jupiter. Jupiter wants to what? Expand everything it touches. Here it's touching on a core emotional situation. Here it's touching on your core being. So now we're taking this optimistic, emotional stability experience that wants to grow, and the sun's going to use this in order to become more of what it wants to be. Okay. So
Right.
when you say sun equals moon Jupiter, you feel it that way. Now, I put it on here because I just want you to see. Sometimes you just need to go, wow, the sun is being influenced by the moon Jupiter. You know what? That feels good. That's it. That's all you need to do. You just need to look at that and know that that's going to be something that's going to feel good and probably be helpful in your chart. You don't even have to go through all the descriptions and all the stuff that we can do. Okay. Now, the next one we have is sun equals moon Saturn. How does that feel?
Restricted.
Almost the first word that will come to your mind is that Saturn tends to control, to restrict, to limit. In this case, a good way of looking at this would be that Saturn is trying to discipline the emotions so that they can be in service to the sun. Okay. And the problem with us human beings is we don't like being disciplined. So therefore we fight against it. Okay. So it's not that Saturn is a negative thing. It's that Saturn sort of knows what the rules are, what the boundaries are. It knows what societal expectations are. It knows when you're in young, it knows what your family expectations are. When you get outside that, it knows what your peer group expectations are. When you get outside that and you get into school, same thing. When you get into a job, it knows what your boss expects. Okay. You're in a church, it knows what the church expects out of you. Okay. AKA God. Okay. Now, if you see God, just by the way, as Jupiter, or Saturn, which god would make you feel better?
Jupiter.
Just as an aside, because if you have a strong Saturn in your chart, you tend to think of God in a very severe way. You probably were raised a Catholic, as a matter of fact, and told that you have to appease God all the time. Okay. Jupiter's a little bit lighter on that. It's more joyful. Maybe you see the joyful side. Maybe you see God smiling, sitting up there, looking down upon you and going, "What a wonderful creation I made." Okay, versus the other way. Damn it, he's violating the rules again. Okay. So you get a sense. This is how I shouldn't say you. This is how I grab those energies and feel them into the chart. Okay, so in this case, we have an optimistic one, we have a pessimistic one, we have one with no limits, we have one with necessary controls, as we like to say. All right, let's go to the next one. So the sun is obviously the big deal, but the moon is going to take that sun and it's going to help give it form and shape. Okay, so we call it the reigning need. Now, every one of your planets wind up trying to help you accomplish your needs. If you've ever been to a psychology class or something like that, you know that there's a need hierarchy. It starts down there with safety and home and family and all that, and it works its way up until you have everything you need, and then you give yourself back to society in some sort of philanthropy or something like that. Okay, at least that's the way it should work. Many of us, unfortunately, get stuck at the lower level and we don't get a chance to get the security above it so we can do what we want to do. Anyways, the moon is your reigning need. It's the way that you feel emotionally fulfilled. It's the feminine principle as opposed to the sun, which is the masculine principle. Oftentimes, the sun represents the father figure. In this case, the moon represents the mother figure. Okay, it expresses one's personality habitually. So how you are when you're by yourself, usually, okay, that's how your moon is being expressed often. Okay, what you like to do when you're by yourself on a day-to-day basis. Okay, once you're outside and you're trying to do something else, then you become your ascendant often, because now you're trying to be what you think other people want you to be. But when you're home by yourself, you can be your moon. And hopefully that's a good thing. So here's a couple of examples. Let's see what you feel about this. In this case, we have the moon, which is going to be accomplished through Sun Venus. So how does that feel, Liz?
Well, it feels good and it feels energetic and beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's likable. It's positive energies that you would like to have. If you're an artist, do you think this would be a good energy to have?
Absolutely.
Because Venus represents the aesthetic as well as relationships. So if a person has moon equals sun Venus, there's a good chance that this person gets along with other people pretty well, except for if we look at the chart and we see that the plumbing's blocked somewhere. But if we don't know just yet whether the plumbing is blocked and we see moon equals sun Venus, we can feel that this person probably gets along pretty well. Maybe when they were in school, they got along with everybody really well. Maybe they were involved in different groups. Okay. Now let's look at and probably that tends toward emotional stability. Okay, because it involves the sun and moon, and that's core. Now here's another one. We have moon equals Venus Uranus. What do you think about that one?
Emotions could be up and down, lots of change.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a bit more erratic. Okay, this is not the stable moon equals sun Venus. This is Venus Uranus that wants to be a little bit different. And the interesting thing about if we have a chart like this, we go in there, it's not that Venus Uranus has a little commandment that says you must be this way. But what we find is those energies were somehow either not supported or supported in a way that caused those energies to be expressed into life this way, usually as a defense mechanism. Because if you can't fit in, a nice thing to have would be maybe Venus Uranus. Okay, because that would allow you to feel good about not fitting in, right?
Exactly.
Okay? And let me read it a couple things here. So moon equals Venus Uranus. This is what Noel said. Because remember, these are not only points that you can use in a natal chart. you can also use them in your predictive work. So if you do a solar arc analysis, and in a solar arc analysis, you see Moon equals Venus Uranus, and it's coming due within the next 3 months, then you can expect sudden excitement in fulfillment of one's needs in love, in sex, or in the arts, or maybe new ideas for the future. So let's say that you're a business person and you were planning to put out something, because this energy would have already been working in the background. You would have been feeling this, you would have been experiencing it, and all of a sudden you're coming up with these new ideas and things, and then you come to an astrologer, and astrologer says, well, yeah, of course, you have Moon equals Venus Uranus. That's going to be exact in the next 3 months. So all during this 3 month, 6 month period before, and all 3 months at least afterwards, this is going to be prevalent in there. So, you know, maybe you're looking for a quirky new relationship with somebody, okay, because you're quirky. Maybe you're looking for, you know, some new sexual experience that you never had before. Okay, Venus Uranus would be something you might want to look at if you want to do something out of the ordinary. Okay, now if you're an artist, this could be a really good time to say, you know what, I'm going to introduce my paintings to the world, because Venus Uranus represents sort of an artistic kind of a different thing, especially if it's different, something that fits maybe into the cultural motif that we have right now. Okay, so there's a couple ways you can do it. You can see them in terms of natal, and you can see them in terms of predictive. Okay, any questions on that?
No, that's great that you can use it for both techniques. I like that.
All right. Now, obviously, Mercury, that's kind of an easy one. This is how you need to think and communicate to be effective. It also represents the cognitive part of you, how you learn, how you process information, maybe some of the early mindset that you chose to have as a result of growing up in your particular family situation. Okay. So, and obviously Mercury is the same thing. All the planets we're talking about, they're not stationary up there. They move around through your chart too. So you have the transits, which are where everything is at this particular time up in the sky. And then you have the symbolic measures like solar arcs, which are approximately all the planets in your chart will move approximately 1 degree each year, a little bit less, a little bit more, depending on the time of year you were born. You have progressions where every year of your life is equal to 1 day. So if you go into your ephemeris and you're 50 years old and you want to know what your progressions are, you go to your ephemeris, open it up and say, I was born on this day. Let me go down 50 days later. Boom, there's where the planets are in your sky right then and there. Okay, so there's many, many ways to look at these things. Okay, so anyways, back to Mercury. Mercury, again, is how you need to think, communicate to be effective. So in this case, we have, if you remember one of our big midpoints, it was Jupiter, Pluto. And we learned that anytime you see Jupiter, Pluto inside or making a connection with one of the planets, there is the chance for something really big and prosperous potential to happen. Okay. Now, again, this is at the level that you're at. For example, if you are working out in a local, let's say you're an artist and you're working out in a local studio and you're learning your art, and Mercury equals Jupiter, Pluto comes along, okay, your teacher may go, wow, you know, you could be really good at this, and give you a tremendous mindset about how good you can be. And that might be the thing that starts to push you out in the road. If you are a famous actor and this is coming up in your chart, then there's a good chance that your communication style is going to be very prominent, successful, and big. So if you have a new movie coming out, what's a movie? It's a Neptunian communication, okay? It's a communication. So Mercury is going to be involved in here. So this could be a good time for you to have that movie coming out, and most likely it'll be very successful, as an example. If you see it in the chart, you know that this person can have success through some form of Mercury thing, which means thinking, writing, creating songs, Even dancing, Mercury, because of the depthness of the Mercury, mostly Venus. But let's say the person wants to be a teacher. Could they be a successful teacher if they have Mercury equals Jupiter, Pluto? Chances are
Absolutely.
really good they could be. Okay, what about coaching? Okay,
Yes.
these are all different levels of various things that Mercury would be good at. Okay, and if they have the Mercury equals Jupiter, Pluto, they can be really damn good at it and become even known for it. Okay, could be the teacher who wins the best teacher award for 3 or 4 years in a row, as an example. Okay, now here's another one. This is Mercury Neptune. Okay, now Neptune is a tricky. We always say Neptune represents what seems to be, but what seems to be may not be. Okay, so Neptune is an interesting one. Most people do not know how to handle Neptune, and therefore that's why they have the challenges in their life, because Neptune can represent the ugliness, it can represent drugs, alcoholism, it could represent deception, it could represent escapism, it could represent introduction down the path to mental illness. Okay, there's a lot of negative things, but Neptune is also visionary. If you learn to tap into Neptune, you learn to see things that don't exist yet. And by seeing what doesn't exist, you help to bring it into existence. Okay, so Neptune can be visionary, as Noel would have said. Here's an example of if in your chart you see that Mercury is equaling your Neptune node within the next 3 months, then maybe you'd say imagination can be shared with others. Why? Imagination, Mercury, thinking through Neptune to groups, node. Okay, so the node starts out, as you're going to see later, generally speaking, with the mother or the mother influence, maternal influence. So in this case, it would be Mercury, Neptune associations with groups. How does that all work? So imagination shared with others. It could be another one that you're expecting too much from others. Okay, you've created a false expectation, and therefore you're going to be disillusioned by it because now it's not going to meet up to your expectation. This is where Neptune can have it, but it's not Neptune doing a bad thing here, is it? It's the person creating the expectation. Okay, being let down by occurrences or undependability. It could be a group that you were counting on and you shouldn't have. Okay, so I mean, there's a wide, vast span of meaning that could be. We are taking it sort of out of context right here, because what we would do is we would look at that within the context of the natal chart and within the context of the level of life that the person is living at that time. So then we would interpret these in within those dimensions. We wouldn't take it, throw it on here, and say, "Oh, it means this." No, wouldn't do that. Okay. Any questions about that?
No, that was very clear. Thank you.
Okay, so Venus. Now, Venus is the other side of the inner planet, so to speak, although Mars probably is considered as well. Venus is how you need to relate to others. Okay, it rules the second house. So the reason it's relate to others because it rules the seventh. It's how and what you value because it rules the second in the natural zodiac. So it also has to do with aesthetics because Venus has to do with arts, things that are beautiful, that kind of thing. Romance, obviously, it's part of the male female dimension, the masculine feminine, sex, and it also adds a touch of grace to whatever it is. So often when you see in particular, I'm going to speak from the male point of view, a beautiful woman that's an actress, if you and you can just tell she just feels Venusian. Well, if you go and get her chart, you will see often that Venus is making an aspect to her ascendant. Lots of times. I mean, I don't know how many times that I've seen it. It's a lot. So much so that I just expect that to be the case when someone strikes me as being Venusian. Okay. Now, what might we? I'm going to ask you to put you on the spot here, Liz. Venus equals Sun Mercury. What would be an example of that?
Well, that you go after or draw to yourself what you desire in a Venusian way, whether that's if you're an artist or it's a romantic relationship or things that you value. You could attract them to you or have a lot of them in your life.
Okay, good. So Venus is that sense of attraction. It's those things that we value. And since we value them, we desire them. And since we desire them, we go out in our life to get them. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Another thing that you could look at this, how would you say this person's, if this person were a singer, how would their voice sound?
Oh, beautiful.
Would you expect that this person would be in a heavy metal rock and roll band, screaming out at the top of their lungs?
Not necessarily, but it anything's possible.
It is possible. That's not the expectation. The expectation is almost angelic in the
Mhm.
way this person might sing. This is the feel that you get for this. So this is another example of where you can see the voice, Venusian voice, if you will. Okay. Again, illuminated by the sun, because remember, the sun, wherever it appears in your chart, in whatever midpoint it is, whatever side of the midpoint it's on, midpoint picture it's trying to illuminate and make things, your purpose, happen for you in your life. Okay, so in this case we see that. Now we also talked I don't remember which lecture, maybe last lecture or the one before, we talked about the sun moon being the most important midpoint picture there is. Okay, the sun moon midpoint picture is important. Liz, why?
Well, it's our core self, basically, I would say.
Yes, I would agree. That's a good way. I always think of it in terms of it's our core. And in this case, the sun, moon, the core is being energized by Venus. It's going to be colored with a very Venusian color. So this would be an example of where in the beginning, it might all go down to mother, okay, as an example, and she puts her touch on top of us. And then later, if it's encouraging, she might tell us how beautiful we are. And she might say, you know, you're so beautiful, you should be in a beauty pageant. Or, you know what, you have such a great voice, I'm going to put you into singing lessons. Okay. Now, on the negative side, the mother might feel competitive about that and say, you know what, I'm not going to help you. Nobody helped me. You want to do that, do it for yourself. Okay. And you get that other side of it. But the potential that's there for this Venus to equal this sun moon, this Venus, if you have a chart and you're doing an analysis and going to talk to your client, if you don't see the Venus equals sun moon and realize how important that is by sign, which house it's located in, and which two houses or more does it rule, you are going to miss out probably on the core essential part of who this person is. And you don't want to do that, do you?
No.
No, we don't. All right, so that's Venus. So Venus again is attracting us. Now Mars is going to come along, and Mars is going to help us get stuff. So Mars is how you need to apply your energy, how you need to assert, to be aggressive. Okay, now being aggressive is not necessarily a bad thing unless you're being aggressive to go up and punch somebody in the face. Okay, now if you're in a boxing ring, that's okay. If you're outside the boxing ring, probably not okay. Okay, it's all about promotion. It's about stirring things up or heating things up. Okay, for what purpose? So that your sun, Mercury, so your sun, moon, Mercury, excuse me, desires of Venus are all accomplished. Okay, Mars is kind of like the sun sends out that energy, and the Mars just takes it and says, okay, let's go, baby. And it's going to work overtime to get you what you want. Now, it's not always easy for Mars. Okay, so here's an example. How do you think Mars equaling Sun Saturn feels?
Well, if you use it in a good way, it's like having the energy to go after what you want in a constructive way. But it could be that it could be going after what you want. You can't reach it because there's too many speed bumps in the way.
Yeah, that's absolutely excellent, Liz. Thank you very much. Yes, exactly. So when you see the Sun Saturn together, when you see it in a chart, it often suggests some early issues with the father figure. And as a result of them, you could wind up having anything from daggone it, I'm going to show him, to my God, I'm going to constantly work overtime to see if I can get him to love me. And you work your entire life and that never happens. You can get all kinds of overcompensation because of Sun Saturn. But what is Saturn there for? Saturn is there to help you structure and help you understand the rules so that in this case, your sun can be all that it wants to be. And so this, like you said, structured, constructive energy that's being sent to Mars, Mars can use that in order to help you accomplish your goals. Okay. Now, if you had Mars and Saturn on the other side, so let's say you had Sun equals Mars Saturn, what does that feel like?
The brake and the gas pedal.
Perfect analogy. Same one I would use. It's the idea that every time you put your foot down on the pedal to get your car moving, somebody comes along and puts his foot on the brakes. So you got this constant, and it can become whiplash.
Yes.
Okay, and it doesn't move you forward. Where it falls in the chart obviously is the key. If it falls in the 11th house, that's going to be tough because you're going to spend your whole life looking and expecting people to love you and not finding it. Okay, as an example, from a psychodynamic level. Okay, but here we're just talking about if that were in the case, it's going to put some obstacles and roadblocks up because most likely something happened when you were young that you really wanted to go after and then you got stopped. Somebody put their foot on your neck and said, no way, I'm the boss here, not you. You're just a young kid. Sit over in that corner and don't do anything. Don't move until I tell you. Okay? It's that kind of a thing. Those are the things that the astrology is all about. It's not about me bringing out a page from a book and reading it to you and you go, oh. No, it's not about that. It's about real life and how does it work through the symbols? How do we use our symbols in order to get our life moving forward? And how do we use our symbols when we know that the energy is being blocked? Okay, that's what a consultation is all about. Okay, that's Mars. So Mars helps us get what we want. Now, Jupiter is lovely, as we know. What Jupiter wants to do is it's our hope for reward. Okay, we hope that if we be our sun and moon, we think about it correctly, we associate with the right people, we get our Mars out there working on it to get one. Our hope is that at the end of this, all of this that we did, that we're going to get a nice reward. And that reward is going to be whatever it is that we want. Okay? Different people have different ideas about what that reward is going to be. But what we know about Jupiter, Jupiter needs to expand. Okay? It has no boundaries. You see it with the Sagittarian symbol, and it's the arrow that you're shooting up there into the sky, and it will go as far as it can possibly go. You don't even know where it lands. It went so far. Okay, it's your ability to see and embrace opportunity. It's the future. Okay, because you think about it, if you have a hope for a reward, have you got it yet?
Nope.
So it must be in the
future.
In the future. Okay. So Jupiter often has no limits, and it can also be excessive optimism because sometimes you can over anticipate, over expect, and what comes back is under delivery. You're disappointed. You didn't get what you want. You thought it was going to be much bigger. It's like going to work for someone and they go, you know what, we'll give you a bonus at the end of this thing. And you do all this work and you work really hard and you in fact, you go out of your way to work harder than everybody else. And then they come around and they give you this envelope and you're expecting it to be, I don't know, $500,000 and you open it up and there's 25 bucks. Okay. And you're going like, I just worked for a whole weekend. I worked my butt off. I worked 12 hours a day. Did I make $1 an hour? Okay. But that's an example of being disappointed by that because you can't control that. Okay. And there's a lot more to this Jupiter thing about the reward and how you see it, because you can have genuine optimism or you can have and insecurity that is expressed in such a way that you say a lot of big things, but you never go after them. So from what you say, you're Jupiter. But when we go back and look at your life and how it's being lived, Jupiter's sorely missing. The plumbing is blocked somewhere, and Jupiter is not able to do what it would like to do. Okay. So then in a consultation, we'd have to get to that if we could and say, okay, this is what's stopping you. Okay. So I'm going to go down to some behavior that you have developed over the years, not to the astrology symbol. Okay. Remember, people make things happen. Okay. Not astrology symbols. Okay. So we have one example here. We have Jupiter equals Moon Neptune. Give me a stab at that one.
Well, with the moon, it'd be your emotions, and Neptune of how you do it. So you could be over dramatic of a situation, or you could have, think big, like have a big dream and bring it in and manifest it possibly.
Yeah, and certainly potentially feel good about it. Anytime, this is a key, there's another little side thing. Anytime you see Jupiter and Neptune in the same configuration, you should automatically begin to think about idealism. And if you're thinking about idealism with the moon, now you're talking about the emotions being entwined with the idealism. So now you only feel good about dreaming about idealistic things, which generally speaking are impossible to achieve. Okay, so you could be setting yourself up for emotional failure with this as well. Okay, because Jupiter will give you lots of that. You want? Jupiter's going to expand it. Jupiter says, oh, you're not feeling good about yourself? No problem. Here's more. Okay, because it's going to expand on it. Another expression here. Here's what Noel would have said. Grand imagining and plans. So like you said the first time, it's kind of like big plans. Okay. Allowing your imagination to go out there and not see any boundaries. Okay, it's another way of looking at it. Artistic interest and success. Okay, and remember, Venus and Neptune, more than any two planets, are generally involved in the artistic side of life. Okay, so having Neptune in something, you have to consider that might be there. Now, if we go to your, your consultation and we see 6 quintiles in your chart and we ask you the question, tell me about the artistic expression you've been doing as a kid, and you go, never did it. Okay. Well, the chances are pretty good that somebody earlier in your career decided that, you know what, it was a waste of your time to work on creative pursuits. You need to be in business. You need to be working at a 9-to-5 job. You need to be working in government, as an example. We watch a lot of Korean shows on Netflix. You won't be surprised at how many of the parents want their children to be safe and secure, because they didn't have it, inside a government bureaucratic job. It's one of the constant themes in the shows. Okay. And in our culture, we had that after the Great Depression, probably 1 or 2 generations, but now we've forgotten that. And now our parents have given us everything we could possibly want. And, most of us are not even satisfied with that.
Exactly.
So there you go. All right. Now, here's the big bugaboo, Saturn. Okay. I didn't like Saturn when I grew up. I didn't know I didn't like Saturn. But the reason I know I didn't like Saturn was I hated authority. And Saturn represents authority. Okay. And authority in all the various ways. Okay. I was anti-disestablishment oriented in my thinking. And somehow this bonehead guy joined the military for 4 years and somehow just made it through because I did not like authority. So what do? You join the organization with the most authoritarian structure that there is. But there were reasons for that. Okay, so what is Saturn? Saturn is the need to react and assimilate necessary controls. So inside of your family, there's a Saturn. And the Saturn is your family telling you how they expect you to act. Those expectations are necessary controls, because if you want to survive and do well in your family, then all you have to do is stay within the boundaries that the family gives you. Those are called necessary controls. Okay? You go to school, same thing. You do your homework, you do all your grades, you read the books, you get really good grades. Eventually, you get to college. Each of them has a level of necessary controls. You get hired for a job, the boss says, okay, this is what I expect. If you do what the boss expects and a little bit more, chances are you're going to do very well in that organization that you just joined. In your church, the same thing. You accept the dogma and the tradition within that church, you probably will do very well. If you decide that some things are not the way they are supposed to be, personal experience, and you start communicating that, you will get kicked out of your church because the necessary controls are not doing their job of controlling you. Okay? And I'm not saying this as a negative against religion. I actually had a spell where I thought I was more spiritual than most of the people in the church, even people that have been there for 20, 30 years. Okay? So I allowed I see it now, I allowed my authoritarian issues to get in the way there too. Anyway, so it represents necessary controls. It can be delays and frustrations. Why delays? Because sometimes you can't get what you want when you want it. Okay? Mama, I want to eat Peking duck. Sorry, we don't have enough money for that. That's a delay and a frustration, right? Okay? It could be something just common like that. But we get the same things in life. I go into my job. I'm expecting it every year. I've been told that I'm going to get a raise. The economy on the year that I'm supposed to get a raise, the month, the economy goes to hell in a half water. I'm barely keeping my job. Boss comes and says, I'm sorry, we're going to have to delay your bonus until we get more stability under there. The good news is you still have your job. Now, you might feel frustrated and bad at that, depending on the way you want to look at it. You can feel unappreciated. You can feel like, you know what, if you really want me to do more and get this company righted, you need to pay me more money. Okay? But that's a frustration. Oftentimes, Saturn represents the father principle. There's a couple really keys about Saturn too, which I'm not going to go into. But if you're not getting the father principle rooted in your life, you are not getting the necessary authoritative love you needed as a kid. If you didn't get that, there's going to be a hole in you that's missing that. That's why you see movies where a woman told you, I've been married 6 times. And then later she reveals, well, each time I've been looking for my father, as an example. Okay. And there's many stories like that, but it goes the entire gamut. The reason I had my chip on my shoulder, my Saturn, was because I didn't have a father. I didn't know who he was. Okay. So I spent my earlier life not looking for him, but being pissed off about the fact that I didn't have a father. Okay. Authority, discipline, structure. We've already used all these words. Maturity. So Saturn's job is to actually to get you through all of these necessary controls, which consist of all those words, so that I can get you to the point where you can become mature and get the achievement that you want and get the stability of it as a result of that. But if you decide to fight it your entire life, until you stop fighting Saturn, you're not going to get what you want. Okay. It's for the long term. It's another thing about Saturn. Okay. If you're the kind of person who is Saturnine, then, and you like to work in projects, then if I were your boss, I would give you a project that you could work on for years because you'd have no problem working on it. But if I had a person and I knew they were Gemini over here, I wouldn't give them that same project because I know they're going to get bored really quickly and they're going to be off looking for other things that they want to do. But with you, I know I can rely upon that. Okay. Saturn represents time itself, but it also represents sadness, denial, depression, and pessimism. if it's not a chemical thing, it's mostly born on those early childhood years where we did not get our needs met, and they result in these kind of things happening. Okay. Now we have kind of a heavy picture here because we have Saturn equals Mercury, Pluto. Now Mercury, Pluto, whatever it touches, it's going to intensify and magnify big time. So we've got some serious potential communication going on over here. Equals Saturn. Okay. So Saturn can do its job on this. So let me just, in this case, I'll just read what Noel said. Insistence of a point of view. Can you see that? Mercury, Pluto point of view, and Saturn insisting that that's the only right, correct point of view to have. Saturn putting its boundaries on it. Okay. Unrelenting demands. We talked about that in some of the examples. Okay. Unrelenting demands. Because again, this is going to be someone who has either a very high opinion of themselves in a good way, or has a very high opinion of themselves, but it's born out of an insecurity. And if they have the insecurity, which is managing things, this is not going to be a very happy picture. Okay. Couple more. Driven by fear of failure. Okay. And needing control. So because you're being controlled by everybody else and necessary controls, this picture winds up being that you wind up needing to be in control. Okay. Desperately, in order to what? Defend yourself, protect yourself against all those other peoples out there, starting from the parents all the way up, who try to thwart you. Okay. So that's why in this case we get the description. And this would be one you'd want to look at if you were talking with someone, because if there was the potential of depression in their family, this is a signature trigger. Okay, so it could even show some of those kinds of things. Okay, questions? Saturn?
No, I would just say become friends with Saturn.
Absolutely. Saturn is your friend in the long run. It just will never feel comfortable. Okay. It's the kind of friend you shake their hand and your hand almost breaks apart because it's so strong and firm. But you don't want to let go. Okay. Don't let go. Keep feeling that strong Saturn hand. Okay. All right. Uranus. Okay. So we have Saturn. In the old days, we didn't have Uranus or Neptune or Pluto. So we had Saturn. Saturn was it. We looked up with our eyes. Although we didn't know it, we could every now and then barely see Uranus, so it was kind of there. But we knew that Saturn was it. Saturn was the outer boundaries. Saturn was the outer structures. Saturn was the walls. Saturn was, I'm a king of this country. You're my servant. Everything you do in your life, you're doing for me. That's your boxed walls, okay? Uranus comes along and says, yeah, I get that we need that necessary control, because they want you to fit in, but what about you? Aren't you supposed to become all you can be? Doesn't the army say become all you can be? Does it say become all you can be so I can stifle and necessarily control you and be your authority and tell you what to do and all that? It says be what you can be, all that you can be. Okay, it's not quite true, and it is quite true. Uranus is the same way. It wants to help you uniquely individuate. Jung was the first one, I think, that came along and brought this idea out. And it often happens to a suddenness. That's why you see the lightning bolt, and you hear the ancient mythology where a lightning bolt came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden there was either a thought that they never thought before, or something else happened. Okay, so it often has to do with a suddenness and intensity. It also has an intensity itself, but in a sort of a buzzing sort of a way. You know how you sometimes, if you go out, have you ever heard a downed wire line, and you go out and you hear the electric going, or bzz, bzz,
Yes.
bzz. Okay, that's Uranus. Okay, Uranus is a buzzer. Okay, so I have Uranus on my ascendant. And everybody who knows me knows that I'm constantly moving and moving my hands and moving this and always talking. And it's like, bzz, 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 I'm like a bead. It's running around from one point to another. Okay. Pontificating often on what I think is reality, probably mostly wrong, but that's another story. So it has to do with that kind of intensity. It has to do with breaking away from the status quo. So Saturn knows what the status quo is. In order for you to succeed, it's going to say, let's become the status quo. Uranus comes along and says, no. We need to break that status quo. And if you have Uranus in aspect with your Saturn in your chart, there's going to come a time in your life when Uranus is going to come along and demand that you do just that. Okay? So you need to be looking for that in terms of transits and arcs, because that's going to be a very important time. Because generally speaking, Uranus always wins. Okay? It has to do with waking up and even potentially rebellion. Because what if you're trying to become who you uniquely want to be? Society says, we don't like that version of yourself. And so they try to put you back in a box. That's where rebellion comes out of. Okay? And rebellion can take many, many forms. In our culture right now, we have quite a rebellion between two polarized parts of the country. Okay? They're both in rebellion against each other. They stop talking to each other. Nothing else to do. Okay, let's try to break each other down. Okay, let's rebel. All right, let's look at a picture here. So here we have Uranus equals Moon Venus. Okay, it's a little bit different, but if we think of the idea of suddenness, what might this be with Venus?
Well, our moods are changing, our emotions are changing, or even what we want and desire could all of a sudden change.
Exactly, our romantic feelings. Okay, because this is Venus Moon. Moon is about moon and Venus are both about love, right? So Uranus is suddenly coming along and changing how we feel about that situation. Now, could this be an aspect of divorce? Absolutely. Could it be an aspect of finding someone really quirky and new who you attract because they're just like yourself and you start a new relationship? Absolutely. Can't make a judgment about whether it's a divorce because we don't know. Depends on the context of the life and what the person's going through and all the other measurements. Okay. All right. We're at 4 already. So let's go to the next one. Neptune. Here's our famous Neptune. So the Neptune is the need to connect to something other than it seems. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. Whenever you see Neptune in a chart, if it's in the 4th house, you know something was other than it seems about those early foundational years. If it's up in the 10th house, you know there's something other than it seems about the career. If it's in the 7th house, something other than it seems about the relationships that this person wants to have. Okay. In the 1st, the same thing. If it's in the 1st, there could be something other than it seems about identity development. Okay, could have been something back there. So if you take that little phrase, other than it seems, then you'll get the idea that there's something behind this Neptune that I need to ferret out. Why is there something other than it seems here? And what is it? Okay, and let the client tell you what that is. You're not going to guess it. Well, it's possible to guess, but you don't want to guess. You want to have a dialogue and ask your customer, client. It often has to do, like I said, Neptune is hard for people to work with. So it often has to do with escape, delusion, and suppression. Okay. Sometimes things happen and they're painful. Well, you know what? I don't want to think about them. So I develop a defense mechanism called suppression, and I just bury that down in my subconscious. The problem with that is not only is that not healthy, but every now and then it's going to erupt into your conscious and something's going to happen. Because anything that's unsettled in the unconscious, unless it becomes conscious, it's going to have a problem. Okay. So that's suppression. It also has to do with idealism. Again, anytime there's a Neptune, with a Jupiter in particular, but a Neptune, Sun, Neptune, Moon, Neptune, career, Neptune, Ascendant, you have to be thinking that there could be potential idealism. And if there is idealism, like I said earlier, idealism is something that you dream about that you cannot attain. It's not something that it's not a visualization of creating a picture in your mind of the next product you're going to create, and then you go about doing it. Okay, that's a visualization. But idealism is visualization to perfection, which can never be accomplished in our particular world, at least. It has to do with fog, or the amount of a fog in the nebula sense. Sometimes if you get a Neptune aspect coming to an ascendant or an angle, then there's often a 2-year period where you feel like you're under a fog. You can't see things clearly, so you don't quite know what's happening. So if you don't quite know what's happening, how do you go about resolving it? You can't, right? So it takes a while, and then it has various effects on how you feel about yourself as a result. But it's the fog. But on the positive side, it's imagination or visualization, it's aesthetics, it's vision, it's spirituality, okay, on a positive side. And spirituality starting with self, but really out to help others, because Neptune wants to connect with something outside of itself. There's no boundaries for Neptune, okay? Neptune includes everything, okay? All right. Neptune in this case. Now, this is an interesting one. So we have the midpoint picture, Neptune equals Mercury, Jupiter. What would you think about that, Liz?
Well, no boundaries, maybe how you communicate, and Jupiter wants to expand that communication. It could be, very prophetic, but it could be like just really out there and full of fluff.
Yeah, it could be extremely imaginative thinking. It could be inspirational. If you were a preacher and you had Neptune equals Mercury, Jupiter, and you were delivering sermons, this might actually be a really good thing to have in your chart and to tee into, because it's going to help you that way. Same thing with an artist. Okay, so you have the Jupiter Mercury. So this is successful communication, right?
Yes.
Through a Neptunian coloring. So this could be some sort of artistic thing that's going on. Maybe somebody is making a message in a painting. Maybe their painting style is that they deliver messages in the painting. Maybe it's a cultural message. Maybe it's a religious message. Maybe it's an anti-message. Who knows what it could be? But it's that kind of a thing.
Good for a fantasy writer.
Yes, it could be for a fantasy writer or scientific writer or a metaphysical writer. This is a beautiful midpoint picture to have. Okay. The only negative side is with Neptune, if it's not working out, then there's a tendency to lose focus easily because it's Neptune. Okay. It has all of those things that we discussed above. Anything else on that? No, I think we covered it pretty well. Okay, Pluto. Now, Pluto is the smallest, teeniest little former planet that there is. And yet it is considered to be, in my opinion, probably the most powerful and intense planet there is. Whatever Pluto touches, think of it like an adverb. So if you're climbing a mountain, the question then becomes, how high? If you're going down into the ocean, it's like, how deep do you want to go? Because Pluto's going to take you as deep as you could. And in fact, it's going to take you deeper than what you want to go. Okay. It intensifies to that degree. Now, Pluto, as we know, based on all the mythology, based on the 8th house and all of that kind of thing, it's a need. Noel put it this way. He took the empowerment and transformation idea and converted that into perspective. Because if you think about it, how do you become empowered or transformed unless your mind changes? So Pluto is all about changing your mind for something that will empower you. But if that something has not empowered you yet, it could very well disempower you. Okay. It also has to do with the masses. Okay, so if you see in a chart like go and look at famous charts and see how many of them where Pluto is in the 7th house or on the Aries point or on the node or in some strong configuration with the MC, suggesting the potential for fame. Okay, as an example. Now, you could have 2 or 3 aspects that were potentials for fame, but if you didn't put yourself in an environment where they could manifest, the best you could have is maybe being seen as significant in your local area. Okay, so you have to be in an area where these things can happen. Power over self or power over others. Okay, we know that Pluto has to do with the Hiroshima bomb as an example, because right when Pluto came out, boom, came the bomb. Now, I've often wondered, now that they dissed Pluto and took it from being a planet, I wonder how pissed off Pluto is going to be in the next millennia and what that's going to represent to the world, because they may not, astronomers may not look at Pluto anymore, but Pluto will not be ignored. Okay, so it's going to make itself known, I'm hoping, in a positive way. Now, let's look at Pluto equals Mars, Jupiter. Let's think about that one. Okay, what do you think about that?
Well, to dive deep and, be able to do it in a good way, that Mars gives you the courage and the adventure to take a deep dive to improve yourself or step into your own power, perhaps. And Jupiter wants to expand that. So all the work, whether you're doing some counseling work with a counselor, it's like this could be very helpful to accomplish that work.
Absolutely, and I think that the Mars Jupiter, I think you hit it right on. It's extremely creative. It's self application, and it's going to be done in a big way because Pluto's involved. Pluto's going to intensify whatever it touches. Okay, Mars Jupiter, you often will see some form of aspect or midpoint picture with Mars Jupiter involved, with enterprise and successful business as an example, because this is Mars, is you're, like you said, you're taking all this energy together, you're putting it together in a very favorable way, and you're giving it out. Okay, and Pluto's going to try to come along and make it really big. Okay, it can also be, depending on what level you are, it could be demanding success from the environment. Okay, because Pluto represents the masses, represents everything out there. So Pluto's coming along, there's an expectation that you're going to get it. Well, what if the opportunity gets squelched for some other reason? Okay, it can still happen. Just because you have this beautiful midpoint picture doesn't mean it's going to manifest exactly the way you want or at the time you want it, unless it shows up correctly. But really, another way of looking at this is Jupiter and Pluto's involved, the big picture, the really, really big picture. So if you have this in your chart, then you want to think big. You don't want to think in this, like I call it the unfortunate, my Jupiter's in Virgo. I have Jupiter, the planet of expansion, to make things bigger. I got it in critical Virgo, which tries to tear it down and look at all the daggone minutia and detail and all of that. Thank God I write code. Okay, because if I did anything else, I don't know what I would do. That would drive me crazy because I like to see the big picture, but I have no choice but to get down into the minutia of it. Okay, so in this case, if I had this aspect, that would help ameliorate that to some extent. Okay, because it wants me to see the really big picture and to step into it and make it mine and the world's. Okay, so this is a powerful thing. So whenever you see Pluto in a midpoint equaling a midpoint, then you know that it has the possibility for big change, for deep transformation, deep empowerment. And if you just think that Pluto is all about perspective change for personal power, the only other choice is personal disempowerment. Okay, so let's work on getting the disempowerment to the opposite side of the ledger and get more things stacked up on the powerful side. That's Pluto.
Sounds good.
Okay, we've got a couple more here. Points of projection. So you have your ascendant in midheaven. In this case, the ascendant, as you already know, it's your personal projection. It has to do with the false image that you give the world. Because why is it false? Because your ascendant knows daggone well that when you're with somebody, you better act a certain way or else you can expect something else. So what do? You put on your mask and you pretend that you're this person. Okay? It's not who you are usually. That's the false image. Okay, so it's your personal projection. It ideally, it's how you want the world to see you. So you're communicating in a way that is unfiltered, in a way it's not that you don't care, you're being yourself and delivering to the world the way you see things or presenting yourself. Okay, it has to do with identity development because it's the first house, it's Aries, it's the first point in the natal zodiac. Okay, when you were born, you came out of somewhere and you became a living soul. right there at your ascendant. The ascendant is when you took your first breath. So it's all about health or illness. It's about survival. And then out of that, we call it the part of the identity development, first, fourth, seventh, and 10th. Okay. So it's all about how you become. Now, if your ascendant is stressed during your first 0 through 12 years, do you think it might have had some impact upon your identity development?
Oh, yes.
I think it would. Okay. Midhaven, it's your ego, your ego status, your professional projection. So in ascendant, it's my personal projection. But when I want the world to know what I can do, I go out and prove myself in a profession. So this is professional projection. It's how I really want the world seeing me doing my thing and seeing me do it well. Okay. Which is why the Ascendant MC midpoint is so important, because you're doing well at the Ascendant, you're doing well at the MC, the world sees you who you are and accepts you. Imagine that. What a feeling that would be, right? Okay, it has to do with ambition, public image, status, and life purpose. We're not going to look at any midpoint pictures, but I just wanted to be complete. And I think we have one more. Yeah. So the other points that we want to look at is the nodal axis. In a natal chart, the nodal axis, when you're young, has to do with the mother or the maternal influence. Okay? Positive or negative. If there is a close square, conjunction, or opposition to the nodal axis, and you're in your consultation, you're going to have a conversation one way or another about the mother. Okay? You just will. Trust me. It also, as you grow up, then it becomes, you're taking how you got along with your mother, and now you're going to project that out into the others that you're coming into contact with. So it becomes relationship instead of with just the mother, now relationship with others. When you get on a professional level, relationship with groups, associations. In certain charts, it can have to do with public or publicity. And it definitely has to do with working together with groups. So, for example, all the people working in the UAC Astrology conference that's going to come up next year, there's probably a lot of them may have some nodal axis. And if they have nodal midpoints at that particular time and they're positive, that's going to contribute to working well with the team. But if they have nodal axis equals Saturn, Pluto coming up, that means they're going to work their butt off, as we learned, work really hard, may not be appreciated, may develop a chip on their shoulder, may become disruptive, may not work out for them, as an example. Okay. Aries point, this is what we talked about. This is the area that of you easily becomes known by others. Okay. It's the part of you that can easily become public, that you can become known for or about. So in your chart, if you see your Aries point equals a certain planet, you will know that you will likely become known for what that planet represents in your chart. If you have it at a particular time, let's say you're, again, famous, and you just started as you're not famous yet, you're an actor, and you just came out with a movie, and you notice that your Aries point equals something in your chart via solar arc. Well, guess what? That's an excellent time to develop out the public and publicity, the awareness. Maybe a good time to go in there and start building your YouTube list. Maybe a good time to start building all the likes that you get from all of these different social media platforms, of which I understand very few, to be honest with you. I'm still old school, but the Aries point is a good quality to have. Okay. And what's next? Do we have anything? Okay. The last few times I gave a list of 3 books, but now I'm recommending that at a minimum, you search out and get Don McBroom's book on midpoints, because really, literally, it has everything you can possibly need. Comes with a really good chart. I don't know if you can see this, but this chart here, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this chart is one of the worksheets in the back, and he gives you all the planets and points, and then he tells you what the focal point keywords are, and then he shows you what the midpoint keywords are. So then you can actually take this one sheet and now go through all the midpoints and just take the terms that are on this sheet, put them together in a little alphabet, and now when you're done, you will have 78 midpoint or whatever the number of midpoint pictures there are from that one sheet. Not to mention how good the book is.
Well,
Okay?
thank you. That's fabulous information. Thanks for sharing with myself and our
My
audience and
pleasure.
everybody else. I really appreciate having you on. And I want to thank you and our audience. And we have a slide here about your software, Astro Peregrine software and classes. Do you want to tell us about that?
Just briefly, if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, of which I apologize every time because I'm not as active as I should be. If you want to book a demo to see how our astrology software works, the demo's there. If you have any questions about any of these lectures or about software or whatever, you can get in touch with me at info@astroperegrine.com. And if you do wind up becoming a customer as a result of seeing it inside of Liz's lectures, then I will also offer you a discount depending on what version of software that you get. Oh, and I also have private training classes one-on-one. Yes, that's one-on-one. People, me with you. Not a video course, but me with you. Okay. So you take that course and you'll be very good astrologer.
Well, that sounds very interesting. Thank you, John.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a number of other shows with Astrology Star Sisters and other guest astrologers. There's lots to watch and look forward to in the future. And I want to thank you again, John, and our audience. And we're going to say goodbye for now, and we'll see you next time.